Welcome to the Infinite Life podcast. I'm your host, Katische Haberfield. As a spiritual regression therapist, spirit releasement therapist, and medium, I help my clients to break free of karmic behaviours and limiting beliefs impacting their lives. This free podcast takes you behind the scenes in sessions with my clients as they experience regression sessions and celestial healings, as they access the wisdom of their sub and superconscious mind and witness the unfolding story of their soul. I hope this podcast provides you with inspiration and insights that can be applied to your life. Welcome back to the Infinite Life podcast. This week we are going to yet another session with Megan Jones, and we are going to see who comes through. This session for me is particularly interesting because it looks at war and the effects of war on human beings. So no matter what you feel about war, it's great to be open-minded about what can happen to human beings who die in war and fright, as you would at the time of death. It also helps us have compassion, I believe, for soldiers of all kinds and of all nationalities, irrespective of which side of the battle they were on. It helps us understand a little bit of the trauma of those who have returned alive from war and have to try and resume their normal life. I think it explains why some soldiers feel haunted and guilty that they survived. And I think it provides us also insight with the potential to examine, do soldiers bring back the ghosts of others on their shoulders? It's a question worth pondering. Anyway, it's an interesting session today. It's not meant to be somber, but you may feel a little emotional when you hear George Esmond Haggie tell us his story. Thank you for listening. Namaste. I've been doing a lot of crossing over spirits, like a lot, massive amounts. Basically, Harry just sends me to locations now, all the time.
That's awesome.
And he also brings them here when it's urgent. So, and here from all around the world, and I had one here from 1342 or something like that. I have a number of questions to ask any spirit guide that wants to come in to help me with the technicalities. I have questions about my house and how I'm trying to understand the logistics of how what's happening with the crossing over is happening. I have a whole list of questions, but we've got 9 sessions.
Oh, yeah.
But the priority for me is the spirits that I've crossed over personal messages. I'm pretty sure Dad wants to come in today because there are a few signs, but my priority for these sessions is to get the messages from the people that I've crossed over, whether they be in my house, in a cemetery, in a pub, or wherever I've done the crossing over, to learn any guidance that any of the spirits or the being angelics or the spirits wish to tell me about what they're trying to teach me. And yeah, so really structured in terms of the spirits that come through that I have crossed over. I'm really wanting to know where I cross them over so that I can, because what I have now is like a folder that I basically go through and have all the evidence about each one who crossed over, what the time is. I take all the photographs and everything and I write down my notes about what they said to me at the time of crossing over. But basically, I'm wanting to identify who they were where they were at the time of crossing them over, and then anything that's important about their story that's not knowable based on the gravestone or something that I could publicly research. Also, there seems to have been a rush of spirits coming here. And I had a pretty hard boundary about no spirits in the house unless it was urgent. So I'm wanting to understand over these 9 sessions if there's some kind of portal in the house. And what I'm doing, Maggie, is that on the phone, there's some interesting paranormal apps that I've been learning to use that record the audio, because I'm getting a bit frustrated with the audio and the Zoom in terms of catching spirits on Zoom, in terms of understanding what they want to say. It's always only just to back up what I'm hearing myself. But there is when I'm capturing them, and I haven't gone through and reviewed them on the app, but there's a lot of German and European spirits that I'm hearing. And so what I'm wanting to know is if any of these spirits come through to you that are happy to talk, are they to do with the soldiers across the road? Were they attached to those soldiers? Is that how we're getting all the Europeans here? I can hear a lot of Germans. And if any of them have any understanding or insights about the technical side of things, that's all good too. So I'm open to, as weird and wonderful as they want to bend my mind and open my mind to the really understanding what spirits can and can't do when they're in the non-crossed over state, in terms of my understanding of their ability to move around. Because my understanding, Maggie, is that they stay where they're either at the grave or the location where they're attached emotionally to, right? That they can't just go whizzing around the world. They're in this fog. But I want to understand how, if there's ones here, how they come here. Is it because Harry's bringing them in? Is it because they're across the road with a hospital and all the diggers, the returned soldiers? Or is there a portal here? Anything that any of them can shed or light on and educate us about spirits, because I know it helps you as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
It would be fascinating to me. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
So, yeah. I'm not going to shy away and say no to any personal messages, but yeah, the focus is really, I'm really being pushed to do the writing. Yeah.
Yeah. I'll say, when I was clearing my mind and meditating a little bit before I jumped on, and I instantly, and again, this is not a surprise to me, but I instantly felt Archangel Michael, and I know that you work a lot with him, so that wasn't surprising to me. But I did feel like he particularly made himself known to me, because this work that you're doing today is part of your purpose. And I did get the feeling that maybe not today, but previously, your work has been more scattered and more loose in different areas. And so I feel like he specifically came through and wanted us to know that this is what you should be working on. That,
yeah, it's just different, because I'm really comfortable with that. I really enjoy working with the spirits and the dead, so to speak. But it's this whole new mind shift on, because I see this as in the zone, in the flow. I like it. But it's that whole, well, what happens to my clients and how do I transition? Like, you don't make money off this. Is spiritual service. You know what I mean? So it's that, yeah, I get that really strongly. And I get, that's why I'm being pushed in this direction. But it's, yeah, it might take my little human mind a while to fully trust myself. Like, I do trust, but it's also that I'm a bit out there.
yeah. And I think that you have a very unique skill set, and you have a very unique way of piecing different things together. Whereas there's a lot of teachers out there that would maybe only want to do a certain part of this work. Whereas I feel like you actually get out there and you do what you're saying you're doing, you teach what you're talking about, you're connecting to these spirits firsthand, and then you're taking what you're learning, you're taking that knowledge and that information, and you're sitting with it, you're unfolding it, you're talking to your guides about it, you're asking for clarity on it, you're bringing other people in to get other people's points of view and other perspectives, and then you're putting that out there in modalities that is teachable to other people, whether it's through your podcast or through writing. And I think that's what makes this work very unique from other spiritual teachers that do things similar.
Yeah. And that's the thing, is I am trying to learn. I'm like trying to learn from the paranormal community, because I have such a strong reaction negatively towards ghost hunting. But say, for example, one of the things that's happened now is I watch and this will be a really big, there's a particular one spirit that I really hope comes through. So I invited to do a paranormal podcast, and I was like, oh, pretty strong feelings on paranormal stuff. Let me listen to your podcast and then I'll agree afterwards. And I started listening to the podcast and I thought, you know what? No, my message is important. I'll go on anyway. Even if it offends every single person that listens to that podcast, I meant to go on it. So I started listening to an episode so I could just get a feel of the guy, and he's a lovely guy, and he had a ghost hunter on. And I only listened to half an hour of the session, only because that was all the amount of time I could allocate at that moment, not because I didn't like the episode. I was fascinated by the episode, and I went and found the person's website, and like half an hour later, the person that they were talking about, that this ghost hunter had written a whole book on, came in the room. And I'm like, you're joking. And I was like, that's pretty fast. And why do we allow them to come into the room? This is not a child, Harry. I thought we were just doing children that were urgent. Why is this one? And I felt like there's also some new connection now to where I see particularly known ghost hunters or whatever talking about people. It's as soon as I have this thought stream now, and that spirit seems to know that I have the human will to cross them over, they have the human will decision that they want to go now. The time and space collapses and they're here, which is a new thing for me.
Yeah.
So yeah, anytime Angela, like I got to the point I was like, how come you angels just don't cross them over? And then I remembered and realized angels can't interfere with human will. So if you die and you don't want to cross over, the angels won't interfere. And if you decide not to cross over, the angels can't interfere with you wanting to cross over. They've got to connect you with a human being who's able to do that, or you've got to do it yourself. So yeah, I'm still learning in terms of who brings them to me, how they understand that suddenly I know that they are there. Is it going to be from now on fast as every time I read a book or see something where I know there's a location with somebody who hasn't crossed over? Is it going to be? I'm curious to know.
Yeah.
Because I've got to retrain my nervous system as well, because there's that little bit of that as well.
Yeah, I'll say I'm on the same page with you when it comes to my own personal experiences that I've had of late as well, where in the past, I feel like we've always thought that spirits were contained to one area, but I also have had spirits come to me because they know that I can help them.
Yeah.
And so I feel like that is maybe information that has either changed, but I'm more feeling like it was just never accurate information, that we just assumed that spirits could not move around. And I think that a lot of times that's the case, but it's not because they can't. It's more so because they're not able to within the certain conditions that they are in. But I think that once they make a decision, whether that decision is, hey, I'm going to attach to this person, I'm going to attach to this object, or I want help to cross over, I think once they make that decision, they're able to do that. That's what I've been experiencing lately. So hopefully that gives you some insight onto why they're coming through. I don't feel like there's a portal or anything like that around you. I do feel like they're drawn to you specifically because you have the intention to cross over spirits. Now, if they're coming in too much, if they're coming in at times that you're uncomfortable with, you would need to reestablish those boundaries and ask your spirit team to come in and set those parameters for you.
Yeah, and that's what I do. It's only when I'm at home during the day. If any guests are here, no. Hard no. Weekends, hard no. Weekdays. It was just like this morning at 5 a.m. I went outside and whoosh. And you can hear them say, boundary down.
Yep. And sometimes the spirits will still push our boundaries, especially if it's a spirit that's desperate, a spirit that is still really needing help. But you should just reaffirm those and say, no, not right now. You can come back to me during these set times. And I've actually had to do that lately as well. I had a friend of mine who came into the shop and said that there was a spirit that had passed away behind her house. He kept coming in to help me. And she's like, I don't know how to help you. I don't know what to do. And so I told her, I said, I will fill in and let him. I said, you let him know that I will help him and I will reach out and fill in. And sure enough, within a couple of days, he came to me and I was able to connect to him from my house. I never had to go to her house or anything like that, which I wasn't sure if I would have to. I went ahead and told her I would if I needed to, but I was able to cross him over from my home.
Yeah, I understand it as remote viewing where you're seeing them in that location where they are. And I have done that before with the diggers in France. I remote viewed the cemetery in France and they crossed over, but it was just usually only client-based, session-based spirits would come in, but now I'm not even remote viewing. They're just coming here from wherever, anytime, any location around the world. Yeah, so it's just this huge change in the activity.
And I feel like that, like I said, I feel like that has a lot to do with your intention and your ability to help these spirits. And it's like when they make that same intention and they have that same ability to where they're needing your help and they're wanting your help, and then their spirit can energetically meet with yours. And there's not any extra steps that's needed because the intentions match.
Yeah, and it's mental telepathy, right? Yeah. Yeah, cool. All right. I think that's all I had to say.
All right. So I'll just fill in and see if there's anybody that's wanting to come through.
Thank you.
Okay. The name George came to me. I am feeling like this was maybe a graveside connection because I keep seeing a graveyard.
Okay, yep.
I am feeling like this may be a soldier.
Okay. Huh.
So is this someone?
I've just turned to a page where there's a George who's a soldier. Yep.
Okay. Okay, great.
He would be one of my very first last year.
Okay. So we'll connect with him and do you want any other validation from me or do you want to ask him questions now?
No, I just want to leave it to you.
Okay.
You know the brief outline and the kind of stuff. Just let's see what he has to say.
All right. So I'm feeling like he's making me feel like when he was ready to cross, that he knew that you could help him. He knew that you were willing to help him in this situation, and he was ready. He's making me feel like that's what he wanted. There wasn't any kind of force that was really needed. So how he's making me feel is that he truly was ready. The number 18 keeps coming up for me. Don't know if this is the year, anything, but that number does keep coming up. I'm feeling some heaviness back here. And that's when I'm asking about cause of death. So there is some sensation in the back of my head. There's also some sensation in my chest as well. He keeps bringing up a dog. It seems like it's a small dog. He doesn't feel very old. He feels quite young.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's making me feel like he just wasn't ready at the time of his death, that he did not feel like he had completed his life. And I do feel like that was probably because of his age. He doesn't feel old to me.
Yeah. Is he George from Belgium? Do you get a yes or a no for that?
It feels like a yes.
Yeah. Okay.
It feels like he didn't, it almost feels like he didn't really want to join the services. He didn't want to be a soldier, but it almost felt like he felt obligated. And so he was excited to have it over and done with, come back home and live life. And he felt like that was taken from him because he never got to make it back, is how I'm feeling. He is making me feel a lot of heaviness, a lot of grief. Just a feeling of being homesick. That's really all he's bringing through to me.
Does he have any message that he'd like to impart about his experience between dying and me crossing him over? Does he have any insight into what happened for him in that waiting time?
He's saying it felt like being in a dream, is how he's describing it. It feels the same way you feel in a dream, where part of you normally knows that it feels like it's not real, but you also can't control what's going on. And he said that's how he felt, is that he didn't have control of what he wanted and what he wanted to do. It felt like he was in a dream, a never-ending dream. He also said that he had a lot of fear with him, as far as when he would encounter other people, he would just be overcome with this immense fear that would make him want to run from them and get away from them. And he's saying he feels like he carried that over because he was scared in death. There was a lot of fear surrounding him when he was dying, and it's like that came with him and would project into everything else, in basically like a never-ending nightmare is what he's making me feel like. And he's making me feel confused. There's just things that just don't make sense when you're in that dreamlike state, and he couldn't make sense of what was real and what wasn't. And he's just making me feel like he just lost himself, is how it feels.
And does he have any insight for us now that he has crossed over? Does he know what is he willing to share the purpose of that lifetime, or any insights about what's next for him?
He's saying that like when you encountered him, instead of him normally like feeling that fear and that confusion, he said that it was like you were a light for him, and he felt drawn to you, and he didn't feel that fear because it's like he had this inner knowing that you could help that go away. And so even though most of the time he had all of this confusion and this fear, it was different. And he's making me feel like that's normal for people who do this kind of work, and that's why they can find us, because we're like a beacon and they're drawn to us, because if they're willing and they're ready, they'll come to us. And so that's how he's describing that, is you are like a light, and it's like if everything's cloudy and misty and like you're a light that he can see. He's saying that his purpose was to be earthbound.
Oh, okay, interesting.
Yeah, he's saying that was part of his experience, and he needed to experience overcoming fear in death and overcoming the separation of the soul. His soul needed to experience that part of it. And also,
interesting.
Yeah, I've never heard a spirit tell me that before. I've heard other people say that, but I've never had a spirit tell me that. That's very cool. He's also saying like his another life purpose for him was learning that, how was he saying? He's bringing it back up, that homesick feeling that he was giving me. And And he's saying that he needed to learn that being connected to himself is what is home, not truly being alive and being in a physical body. And that when he became separated from his soul, when he was split, that he stayed homesick the same way he felt homesick when he had to become a soldier. And so he's saying that homesick feeling was a big lesson that he had to learn, and he even had to learn it by when he became detached and he became earthbound. And he had to learn that reconnecting to his soul and to his spirit is what the true feeling of home is, and not where you're at or anything like that. So he's saying that is also part of what he was meant to learn.
Okay, wow, great.
He's also just saying he needed to experience different polarities and different angles. And part of this angle was dying at a young age versus dying at an old age. That was just a different angle that he needed to experience. And he's saying that the crossing over aspect for him was like returning home. It felt like being reconnected with everything that is important to you, just being accepted and loved, and everything that he had been craving, everything that he thought he lost. It felt like all of that just rushed back to him.
Okay.
He's making me feel like when you crossed him over, it was like it was a very desperate moment for him. Like he felt like he was never going to be happy and be fulfilled again, that he was always going to have that just hollow, homesick feeling. And so it was very difficult and very hard and very confusing and very rough for him. So he's making me feel like he was definitely ready. It was everything that he wanted, and that he couldn't be more happy and gracious for your help.
Welcome.
And now he's just making me feel happy and loved, and confirming that he just feels reconnected with his soul and with himself. Did you want to ask him anything?
No, unless he has a final message.
No, just thank you. He just says thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
So how did that go with what you had about him?
I didn't have anything about him because at the time I just had this list of, this was, oh God, maybe I didn't date it unfortunately, but this is like August or September last year. And this is when White Wolf came in, who's my animal spirit guide, and he told me that I had to go find the soldiers. I'm like,
that is really weird. I will show you this. Before I connected with you, I don't know if you can see it. I wrote down wolf. Do you see that?
Yep. Wolf and boys. Yes. So these were the boys that the wolf asked me to go find.
I didn't know why it came through. I was just like, I'll write it down, and if it comes up in our conversation. But so yeah, that's really weird because I didn't know I was going to connect with him. I said that I wanted my intention to match your intention, and that we would connect to whoever needed to come through. And then I wrote down wolf and boys. So yeah, that's really weird.
12, there's 12 of them. That one was George Esmond Haggie, and his memorial's at Belgium. And I was directed to the War Graves website. And I literally had to go through, I can't remember what it was. I think I might have got done with my pendulum something. And then I sat there and we went through this list. It's a huge website with all the soldiers. And we went through the records one by one. This one crossing over? Yes, no. This one, yes, no, yes, no.
Mm-hmm.
And we got 12. So there you go. So yeah, that's a remote. That was a remote crossing over. One of my first. So he would have been, I'm not sure whether he was Boer War or World War One, but yeah, it was the War Memorial's grave site. Yeah, and see, there's some connection because I purchased a house directly opposite the Returned Servicemen League's section of the hospital, which rehabilitates returned veterans.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, really?
Mm-hmm.
There's a strong military link there somewhere. So I find that fascinating.
Mm-hmm.
Considering I don't have any family history with the military.
Yeah. I feel like that's for a reason, though. I feel like you'll come to what that means for you, for sure.
Yeah, for sure. Yep, absolutely. Yes.
And that is the end of this episode. I'd like to thank you for listening. And I'll let you know that I've done a lot of research on George Esmond Haggie and read his letters from war back to his family, found photos, and I'm hoping to include them in a book that I will be writing at the end of this season so that you can put the face to the name. So to keep in the loop, head to my website, katische.com, and subscribe to my newsletter so that you can be told when that book is released. Also, interesting insights is that I have understood some of the links between George and other people that we have interviewed in this season of the podcast, which I'll reveal in the book as well. And I wanted to just remind you that if you feel as though you may have an attached spirit, an earthbound spirit, then it's in the best and highest interest of your soul and their soul to cross them over. You can head to my website and book a collection of sessions so that we can remove these attachments. It's known as Spirit Releasement Therapy. And there's nothing frightening about it, but it's very, very important to release these souls to the light. So important that we'll be doing a whole season coming up soon on the podcast. Until then, take care and namaste.